Rob Pincus is the Executive Vice President of 2AO.org. Rob, always good to see you because these are tough conversations we have been having. By the numbers, this is a tragedy that never, ever should have happened. 800 officers, 1 million people, and a celebration turned tragic, but in a country where there are more guns than people and in a state where you can carry a gun. My question to you is, what should be the bottom line?
Well, I think that a lot of what you've been talking about, these things are tragic. It's not the circumstances that I want to be addressing the audience or having a conversation with you. But there are some things we can take from it. There are lessons we can learn. I think the advice that was just given about talking to children, as a father of an 8-year-old and a 28-year-old with a 7-year-old granddaughter, talking to kids is part of what I do. I think that one of the interesting things that was said is in terms of making sure kids understand that these things can happen, making sure everyone understands that these things can happen. And I think there's this illusion, that there's two illusions that seem to fight with one another in our conscious right now. One, guns are everywhere, so there's inevitably going to be violence. We need to do something about the guns. But then on the other hand, we have this illusion that because there's any number of police officers or any number of people gathered for any reason, that somehow it's supposed to be an impregnable fortress. 800 police officers to 1 million people isn't a great ratio. As we know, and as you were speaking about earlier, it was individual citizens without guns and without really any training or planning that stopped this violence. They intervened.
But
we know
Rob,
a lot of people helped with medical response after the fact.
Rob,
this
when
is where
we were
I think
growing
we need to
up,
be focused, is how can we respond?
We weren't afraid of being shot and killed in grade school. We weren't afraid of being shot and killed in high school. We were worried about the Cold War, duck and cover just in case there was a nuclear attack. But we weren't having active shooter drills. My granddaughters are having active shooter drills in grade school. Have we now moved past the point where we think that people can't be safe?
I think it's important to be prepared, right? So I may maybe just a minute or two younger than you. I didn't have duck and cover drills, but I had fire drills. I wasn't traumatized by the idea that I might be burned alive. My friends weren't, that I'm aware of, right? The idea was we knew that this bad thing could happen. The adults around us were helping us to prepare for that bad thing in the worst case scenario. And the idea there, I think, is to not feel paranoid or scared or paralyzed, but to be prepared and to then go forth confidently with the knowledge that we can meet evil, we can meet tragedy, and we can face violence in our daily lives. We need to be doing as much as we can, obviously, as we've talked about many times, and we can talk about again now. There are ways to try to prevent these things from happening. The ways deal with human behaviors. And I think it's incredibly important that we as a society accept that these human behaviors can be addressed, but they won't always be addressed. And then no number of police officers is going to do it. No number of guns is going to do it. We have to be prepared to face violence.
I want you to listen to this question, not my question, because yesterday marked 6 years since the massacre in Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. Some of the Parkland families were on Capitol Hill. They couldn't have their event covered because the networks were busy covering the latest mass shooting in this country in Kansas City, Missouri. I want you to listen to this incredible sound. It is an AI-generated voice of a Parkland victim.
Hello, I'm Joaquin Oliver. 6 years ago, I was a senior at Parkland. Many students and teachers were murdered on Valentine's Day that year by a person using an AR-15. But you don't care. You never did. It's been 6 years and you've done nothing. Not a thing to stop all the shootings that have continued to happen since.
In this case, it is a voice literally from the grave. He says, what are you going to do to stop this? What is the answer to the question that he poses?
Well, with respect to the families and those involved, some of whom I'm friends with, I've become friends with afterwards. I was friends with one of the families that was involved in the Parkland shooting. Asking me to respond to a computer-generated concept of what someone might say, that is unfair, quite frankly, because I know that I've done a lot since Parkland. And I know the gun community has done a lot. I know like trainers, police officers,
not necessarily to you personally, but why
then.
Is it unfair to society? In other words, I understand your feelings of saying, hey, look, I have worked with these families and I've tried my best. But what about the people that haven't tried? What about the people that say guns don't kill people, people do? The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, I spent a lot of time inside of the gun community, let's say, aggressively and assertively discouraging people from saying ridiculous things like the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Again, you just had one of the couples, maybe both couples you've heard from tonight. I've seen interviews with two different couples today who intervened, who didn't have guns and did stop bad guys with guns, or a bad guy with gun in Kansas City. So we know that to not be true. I think we can dismiss those things on their lack of face value. And if people are truly postulating that that's the answer, that that's the appropriate response, then I think their opinions can be dismissed too. I would condemn them for having those opinions. What I wouldn't do is say that we as a society, particularly the gun community, particularly the training community,
Right.
particularly law enforcement, have done nothing. When this shooting was occurring, I was in the Capitol building in Colorado discussing how to make the training programs better here in the state for everyone who wants to responsibly carry concealed, while still addressing the fears and concerns of people who think there shouldn't be any guns anywhere.
Rob,
And so I was actually delayed in finding out about this shooting.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is we now realize it is going to happen again. Rob Pincus, Executive Vice President of 20A.org. Rob, thanks for being with us.